So in the previous video, we saw about adjournment and adjournment sine die. In this video, we'll look at prorogation. At the end of a session, the presiding officer adjourns the house sine die. We've already seen this, that at the end of a session, the presiding officer adjourns the sine die. This means he adjourns without giving a time for the next meeting. The president then prorogues the house through a notification. Prorogation is the time between two legislative sessions. I repeat, prorogation is the time between two legislative sessions. For example, we have the budget session from February, and then after that budget session ends in April, then again we have the monsoon session. So the time between the budget session and the monsoon session is prorogation. So prorogation is the time between two legislative sessions. So the president prorogues the house through a notification at the end of a session once the presiding officer adjourns the house sine die. So the presiding officer adjourns the house sine die, then the president prorogues the house through a notification. Prorogation is the time between two legislative sessions. On the advice of the Council of Ministers, the president can prorogue the house even while it is in session. So even if the house is in session, the president can prorogue it. Once the president prorogues the house, it means the session has ended. Next we will look at dissolution. What does dissolution mean? Dissolution ends the life of a house. The Rajya Sabha is the permanent house of the parliament and it is hence not subject to dissolution. Only the Lok Sabha can be dissolved. So dissolution ends the life of a house. Let's say a Lok Sabha has come in 2014. Now the life of a Lok Sabha is for 5 years. So in 2019, once the Lok Sabha completes 5 years, then the house is dissolved so that fresh elections can be held and a new Lok Sabha will come in. So dissolution ends the life of a house. Once the Lok Sabha is dissolved, a new house is constituted in line with the results of the new general elections. The Lok Sabha is dissolved at the end of its term of 5 years. However, on the advice of the Prime Minister, who is the head of the Council of Ministers, the President may dissolve the House sooner as well. So, if the Prime Minister advises that please dissolve the House now, the President may dissolve the House. For example, let's say a Prime Minister has finished 4 years in office and he is convinced that now he has a great image in the public, and if elections were to be held now, he would definitely win another term. In that case, the Prime Minister may tell the President to dissolve the House and to hold fresh elections so that he is favoured. So even under such cases, the President may dissolve the House on the advice of the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. Once the house is dissolved, fresh elections need to be conducted. The dissolved house stands dissolved and it cannot be revoked. Please remember that the dissolved house stands dissolved and it cannot be revoked. Of course, there are certain special circumstances also here, that let's say if there has not been a floor test of the house and the President decides that there is a minority government and he dissolves the house, in such a case, there can be judicial scrutiny and then the house can be reinstated. All this is possible. These are all extraordinary circumstances. However, if on the aid and advice of the Prime Minister, the President dissolves the house stands dissolved and it cannot be revoked. So this is about prorogation and dissolution. Now we will look at another term called quorum. For each house to conduct its business, there needs to be a minimum number of members present for the proceedings. So for a sitting of the Lok Sabha to happen, there have to be a certain minimum number of members present. Let's say there are only 20 members present in the house. So can a sitting of the Lok Sabha carry on with just 20 members, or can a sitting of the Rajya Sabha carry on with just 20 members? This is not possible. You need a certain minimum number of members to be present so that the proceedings of the house can be held. This minimum number of members is known as quorum. It is the minimum number of members required in attendance in the house for the house to proceed with the transaction of business. The quorum in each of the houses is 1/10 of the total number of members of that house, including the presiding officer. So the quorum is 1/10 of the total number of members of that house, including the presiding officer. Now we saw that for the Lok Sabha it is 545 members. That means there have to be a minimum of 55 members present. We have seen that the total strength of the Rajya Sabha now is 250. So there need to be at least 25 members, including the presiding officer, that is the chairman, for a session of Rajya Sabha to take place. So this is about quorum. This concludes the video on the jargon that we'll be using as part of discussion of the Union Legislature. In the next video, we'll look at parliamentary committees. Thank you.